Have you ever held a secret for so long that it became part of who you are? Something buried so deep that even the quietest day can stir it awake? I used to think time heals everything, until one ordinary afternoon reminded me that time only hides what we refuse to face. It was a Saturday. Nothing special. No plans, no noise, just the soft hum of the dryer echoing through my house. I had decided to clean my closet, a task I'd delayed for months. Old jackets, forgotten shoes, a pile of sweaters that had lost their charm. It felt like I was sorting through pieces of an old version of myself. And then, right at the back, I found it, an old skirt. I held it up with a strange mix of surprise and nostalgia. Once it had been my favorite, a piece from a younger, freer time when laughter came easily and the world felt light. Without really thinking, I slipped it on. The fabric clung differently now, familiar yet foreign. I laughed softly at my reflection, amused by how much time changes our bodies, our faces, and maybe even our hearts. And then, a sudden knock. Sharp, unexpected. I froze. No one was supposed to come by. For a moment, I just stood there, heart racing. Then curiosity won. I opened the door, and my breath caught. Adam? He stood there, framed by the light, older than I remembered, yet somehow more certain, more composed. It had been years since I'd seen him. Back then, life had been simpler. He smiled faintly, holding a small tool bag. You said something was wrong with the kitchen outlet, he reminded me, his tone calm, familiar. Oh, right. I had asked for help days ago and forgotten all about it. I stepped aside, my pulse still catching up with reality. He walked in, and suddenly the room felt smaller, charged with something invisible. It wasn't awkward, not exactly, but it wasn't ordinary either. As he worked, I tried to keep busy, folding clothes, pretending not to notice the way silence stretched between us. But I could feel it, that quiet pull, like gravity bending the air between two people who've shared something unspoken. You know that feeling when someone's glance lingers a second too long? It's subtle, but your heart always notices first. When he finished, I thanked him. He gave a brief nod, eyes flicking toward me for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then he left. The door clicked shut, but the echo stayed behind. For hours after, I couldn't shake the feeling. I replayed that moment at the door, the way his gaze softened, the faint trace of hesitation in his smile. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just lost in old memories. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Quietly, dangerously, like a thread pulled loose from a tightly woven fabric. By evening, I tried distracting myself with chores, then a movie I barely watched. But my thoughts kept circling back, as if the day refused to end. And then, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Can I ask you something? My heart stuttered. The words were simple, but the timing wasn't. I hesitated before typing back. Sure, what's on your mind? A pause. Then his reply appeared. I keep thinking about today, about you. Do you ever feel like some things happen for a reason? I read it again, and again. The meaning wasn't hidden. It was hovering right there, wrapped in restraint. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed a safe answer. Life does have a strange way of connecting moments we don't always understand. I hit send. Then waited. Nothing. Just silence. But sometimes silence is the loudest response of all. It carries all the words we're too afraid to say. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, eyes tracing patterns on the ceiling, wondering why fate had chosen that exact moment to bring him back. The skirt still hung over the chair, a silent witness to something awakening inside me, something I wasn't ready to name. When morning came, I told myself it was over. Just coincidence. Just nostalgia. But as I made my coffee, there was another knock. Softer this time. Almost cautious. When I opened the door, Adam stood there again. No smile, no pretense. Just a look that said everything had changed. And in that quiet doorway, I realized one truth I could no longer ignore. Sometimes life doesn't give warnings. It gives chances. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The morning light poured through the doorway, brushing against his face. Soft, golden, uncertain. His eyes met mine, and I felt that same quiet electricity from yesterday, only stronger, as if the universe had decided to press on pause. "I didn't mean to show up unannounced," he said finally, his voice low, careful. "I just couldn't stop thinking about yesterday." I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. The words hung in the air between us, too delicate to touch. "It's okay," I managed, stepping aside to let him in. He walked in slowly, as if crossing an invisible line neither of us could name. I watched him set his phone on the counter, his fingers brushing the same spot where he'd fixed the outlet. A small, ordinary detail, and yet everything about it felt symbolic. For a while we just stood there, the silence stretching thin. Then he looked at me. "You ever feel like some moments are unfinished?" I met his gaze. "Maybe they're just waiting for the right time," I said quietly. He smiled faintly. "Maybe." The conversation that followed was soft, almost hesitant. Two people walking through memories they thought they'd buried. We talked about the years between then and now, the choices we made, the paths that diverged. He spoke about regrets, small ones, big ones. And I listened, realizing how much we had both changed. At some point he looked around and laughed softly. "Your place hasn't changed much," he said. "Neither have you," I replied before I could stop myself. The words slipped out naturally, but their weight was undeniable. He turned, caught my eye, and for a heartbeat the air seemed to still. There it was again, that quiet, magnetic pull. Not lust, not fantasy, something gentler, deeper, something that scared me because it felt real. He took a step closer, then hesitated. "I shouldn't have come," he murmured almost to himself. "Maybe you should have," I said. My voice surprised even me. Steady, calm, but filled with meaning I didn't intend to reveal. He exhaled slowly, eyes searching mine. "You really believe in timing?" I smiled faintly. "I used to think timing was everything. Now I think it's just an excuse we use when we're scared." He didn't reply. Instead, he just looked at me, long, searching, quiet. The kind of look that speaks louder than any confession. My heart raced, but I didn't move. The world outside seemed to fade until it was just us. Two stories colliding again after years of silence. Then he whispered, "I never stopped wondering about you." Something in me shifted. The walls I'd carefully built over the years trembled. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words refused to come. "Adam," I began softly. He shook his head with a half smile. "You don't have to say it. I just needed you to know." We stood there, the distance between us closing without a single step. Time didn't exist in that moment, only the quiet truth we'd both avoided. Then, as if waking from a dream, I stepped back slightly and glanced toward the window. "Sometimes," I said gently, "the universe brings people back to remind us of what still matters." He nodded. "And sometimes, to test if we're ready for it." That line lingered. We both smiled, not out of joy but recognition. Something unspoken had been acknowledged, and even if nothing happened beyond that, everything had changed. After a moment, he reached for his phone and slipped it into his pocket. "I should go," he said softly. I nodded. "Yeah." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Would it be okay if I checked on you sometime?" The question felt simple, but my chest tightened around it. I met his eyes, a small smile finding its way to my lips. "Maybe you already are." He smiled back, that same quiet, meaningful smile that once made the world around me feel lighter. Then he left. The door closed, but the silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It carried warmth, the kind that lingers after someone walks out, leaving a trace of what could have been. I sat by the window, coffee growing cold beside me. Outside, the day stretched open, calm and golden. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a mix of peace and ache, two emotions that rarely live together, but somehow make sense when they do. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe that was the point. Life doesn't always resolve neatly. Sometimes it just teaches us how to feel again. And as the sun climbed higher, a quiet thought settled in my heart. Maybe this wasn't an ending at all. Maybe it was a reminder that even the most ordinary days can turn into turning points when we least expect them.